Hey guys, welcome back to Release Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. And you guys, today I have a doozy for you. And by doozy I mean it's going to remind you exactly of a story that I've told you before on this channel. And you might be like, why, Priscilla? Why would you do this? But this story has actually got so much in common with a couple of other folktales that I wanted to bring up on this channel that I was like, well, you can't just skip over it, because if this story isn't the root origin of the tale, they all share a similar origin story, and this is just one of many varieties. So I'm very excited about it. I'm not going to tell you what story I've already told on this channel that it's like, because I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but we're going to jump into it, okay? And you'll pick it up probably about halfway through what kind of story this is if you've been listening to Storycraft this whole time. And then don't worry, I will link the story that I've told before in the description box below, and then it'll also be available on the Storycraft playlist if you want to run that back. And then again, right up on the top, you guys, if there's a story that you would like me to tell here on the channel, you can just leave it in the comments below, and I'll add it to my list of stories to tell you. But let's jump into it, okay? So our story takes place in the way long ago, as the best stories do, and it happens to just be that there is a king and a queen. And you guys, this king and a queen, for once in the entirety of folkloric history, are not wanting for children. In fact, they have 12 sons already. 12 sons, and the queen is currently pregnant again. And as the king and the queen are just sitting around, chilling by the fireplace, the king looks at the queen and he says, "Wife, if the 13th child you're about to have is a girl, all our 12 other sons are going to die, so that we can give her all their possessions and all the inheritance. She'll inherit the entire kingdom, all the things, if she's a girl. If it's a boy, I guess we'll just let it slide until the next one rolls around." And the queen is like terrified, horrified, shocked, and appalled, because she's just like, what the hell did my husband just say to me? And the king gets up, and he is so enervated, so energized by his proclamation that if he has a daughter next, his 12 previous children shall all die, that he gets up and he goes out and he orders for there to be 12 child-sized coffins made, filled with little shavings. I don't know what the shavings are, but that's in the story, and a tiny pillow for each of their heads. And he has them all built and put into a special room and locked away until the day that the queen gives birth. And the queen this whole time is sitting there going, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? And the king comes back to be like, hey, I just made up all the coffins for our sons in case we have a daughter. Don't tell anyone about this whatsoever, okay? This is our little secret until, the special day. Because, for some reason, the king didn't think people were going to be like, hey, why did you kill your 12 sons? There were 12 of them. You didn't want to leave, one alive? No. So, I guess, in a move that I can only describe as girl dad, ? The king has decided that only a daughter is worthy of inheriting the throne, and therefore, fuck them kids. So, as the due date gets closer, the queen is fretting, absolutely fretting, to the point where, she was knitting little socks and little booties for her new baby, and now that they're stocking length, they're full adult size leg length, because she is so worried that she's not even paying attention to what she's doing. And it comes to pass that her youngest son, who's the only person with a name in this story, Benjamin, comes up to her and he's like, hey mom, what's going on? Why are you so upset? You seem so shaken, you seem so sad, what's going on? And the queen's looking at him, and then she's looking to where the general direction of the coffin room is, and she looks back at her son and she's like, look, I have to tell somebody or I'm going to go crazy. If I tell you, you can't tell anybody, though, okay? And Ben's like, you can trust me. I'm just a little child. I'm great with secrets. So the queen tells Ben what his father is planning, and she's like, let me even show you. Let me just show you. So she takes Benjamin all the way down to the room, shows him the 12 coffins, and the last little tiny one on the end. She goes, that one's yours. In a totally rational move. And she's like, yeah, so you're going to be killed and buried in these coffins if I have a daughter. And she starts sobbing, and Ben's like, well, why don't I just go tell my brothers, and we can fuck off into the woods and avoid this inevitable death. It seems like our dad wants us dead, so we could just avoid that. And she's like, okay, yeah, that's a great idea, actually. I don't know why I didn't warn you guys sooner and arrange this myself as the adult in this situation. But she's like, absolutely, take your brothers, go into the woods, and then every day sit at the top of a tree. You guys can take turns, and when the day comes that I give birth to the child that's in me, I will raise a white flag if it's a son and a red flag if it's a daughter. So you can see that from the tops of the trees, out of the window. I will raise a flag for you guys. And Benjamin's like, yeah, great plan, excellent. So he goes and he tells his brothers, he's like, hey, we gotta go. Dad's gonna kill us if they have a girl. And the brothers are like, the fuck? We're all gonna die because of a girl? Which, like, maybe girl dad could have worked on teaching his sons not to be tiny misogynist, but here we are. He wasn't really helping the situation. So the boys all pack up their stuff, they sneak out in the middle of the night, and they head out into the woods, and they keep going until they find this tiny little cabin that has clearly been abandoned, but it's not just like a regular cabin, guys. They don't know this, but the cabin is enchanted. What way is it enchanted? Stay tuned, you'll find out. So, they go out into the woods, they stay in this cabin, and then they decide that since Benjamin is the youngest, he has to stay home and keep house for all of them. All 11 other brothers he's responsible for, the smallest child. And they're gonna go out and hunt and, like, do the things to, like, survive. But he has to stay home and take care of the house because he's the youngest. So that's what happens. A couple of days go by, a couple of weeks go by, Benjamin keeps house, the brothers go out, they hunt, they bring home the food, and then they make Benjamin cook it, because, like, keeping house after 11 boys isn't enough already. Now he also has to cook them all food. The youngest child. Just reiterating that. And then one day, as they're keeping watch, as they do, you know, the one brother up in the tree keeping watch, they see that the flag that their mother flies from the window is, in fact, red. She had a daughter. And apparently, the king never asked any questions about, like, where did my sons go? When they all just magically up and disappeared. He was like, alright, well, that just makes this easier. But if they come back, off with their heads. So, what ends up happening is a beautiful little girl is born to the king and queen, and the brothers are still out in the woods living the wildlife. And what happens is, over the next 10 years, they make Ben keep house while they go out into the woods, so they never teach Ben, like, the skill of hunting. He just becomes really great at housekeeping and cooking for them. And this just goes by, 10 years. And for them, it seems like no time at all, because they spend every day going out hunting, Ben staying home cleaning and cooking, and then I'm, like, really upset about that. I don't know if you guys can tell. And then when they get home at night, they sit around the table, eat all the food that Ben cooked, and they go talking about how they're going to get revenge on any woman they come across because they lost their inheritance and their whole lives because of a woman. So, like, again, Dad, you could have had a better conversation with them about how to process this anger and maybe not made it so that their whole life was flipped upside down because a girl child. You could have just made it a law, but, like, I digress. So at any rate, at 10 years old, our beautiful little princess, who is in fact very beautiful, and very fair, and very good and honorable, and all the things that, you know, fairy tale princesses tend to be, she even is so special, you guys, she's such a special princess that she has a little star on her forehead. She sees all the people doing laundry, and they're washing up, and it happens that one day they're just washing up 12 men's shirts. And she's like, hey, whose shirts are those? Because they are too small to be my dad's, but they're all different sizes, so who do those belong to? And she asked her mom, and her mom's like, oh, those are your brother's shirts. Yeah. And the princess is like, what the heck? I have brothers? I've never heard of them before today, so what's going on with that? How come I have brothers and you never told me? So the queen, who cannot hold a secret, like, she absolutely can't, she's like a colander full of water, tells her daughter, her 10-year-old daughter, because she has no problem giving trauma to children, all the horrors and why she has no brothers, what happened to her brothers, the whole story. And she's like, yeah, so that's just the way it is, and this is just how we're living now, and if they come home, they're gonna die. And the princess is like, why don't I just go find them? And to that, the queen's like, well, I suppose you could go find them. I am pretty used and accustomed to just sending my children off into the woods to die. So, yeah, absolutely. If you want to go find your brothers, why not? Maybe you can change your dad's mind about this situation or something. I've really given up, honestly. It's been 10 years. And the princess does that. She sets off. She takes the 12 shirts with her because there's some kind of proof, I guess. And she heads off into the woods. And she walks for a while until she comes across the little enchanted cabin. And when she gets there, it's just Benjamin at home. The other brothers are out hunting and doing whatever the fuck they do all goddamn day other than clean up after themselves. And Benjamin's like, who the fuck are you? And she's like, who the fuck are you? And so she ends up telling Benjamin that she's looking for her brother. She has 12 brothers that she never knew, and her dad was going to kill them, and she has their shirts, and she shows them all the shirts, and Benjamin's like, hey, I'm your brother. I'm actually your youngest brother. That's my story. That's me. And she's like, oh my god, and they embrace each other, and they're like hugging and crying and kissing each other, and they're just excited to be back together and reunited. And Benjamin's like, ooh, there's only one problem. Our 11 other brothers have decided that they're going to murder every woman they come across. And so if they see you, they're going to kill you. So you have to hide. And she's like, no, I would gladly die in order to, like, you know, reunite my brothers and bring them back home. And he's like, no, you don't have to do that. That's silly. Like, just let me talk to them. Oh my gosh. Hide underneath this tub and I will work it out. So, the princess hides underneath the tub, and Benjamin waits for the other brothers to come home. When they come home, he starts getting dinner ready, and as he's talking to them, he's like, hey, what's the news? What you hear out there? And the brothers are like, fucking nothing. We were in the woods. There's no news in the woods. And Benjamin's like, what? You don't have any gossip? You don't have any tea? You don't know anything, and you went out into the woods? That's crazy, because I've been in this house all day, and I have news to tell you. At which point, all 11 of these other brothers, reveal themselves to be huge gossips because they're like, what? Tell us, what was it? And Benjamin's like, oh, well, I would love to tell you. It's just like, I don't know if you're ready for this. This tea is pretty piping hot. And they're like, no, tell us. Like, we're seriously ready. And Benjamin's like, I would love to tell you guys, but you have to make me a promise. And they're like, anything. And he's like, promise me that you will not murder the next woman you see. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Tell us what's going on. Tell us the news. And he's like, oh, our sister is here. And he lifts up the tub and reveals that their younger sister is in fact there before them, and the brothers forgot their oath of murdering all the women, and they weren't even annoyed about the fact that they had been tricked into not murdering women, because they just fell upon their sister and they loved her and hugged her, and they were so joyous and happy to be reunited. And it turns out, you guys, they were more than a little bit of joyous and happy to be reunited because the sister just moves in. But then she also ends up in the role of being the youngest child in the house, of taking care of everybody. But she does it with Benjamin. I guess they're partners now, so he's not doing it all alone. And it turns out having a girl in the house made a difference because not only did the sheets get cleaner, but everything around the house got fresher. She jazzed it up a little bit. You know, flowers on the tables, living plants in the garden, all sorts of things. She really spiced up the house. Everyone's quality of life went up with their sister living there, and they lived happily, peacefully together their first several years without any problem. Until one day, the princess decides to, she wants to make dinner a little bit extra special, and she notices that right behind the house, the little enchanted cabin, is a little enchanted creek, and in the creek there are these little enchanted lilies. There's in fact 12 lilies exactly, and she goes, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly the number of brothers I have. So she decides that she's going to pick every single one of those lilies so that she can put them in a special vase on the table for each one of her brothers to brighten up their meal. And as soon as she picks the final one, all 12 of her brothers turn into ravens and fuck off into the sky. And so she's like, what the hell? And a witch shows up behind her and she's like, hey, what the hell did you do to my house? And the little girl turns around and she's like, I lived here with my brothers. I've been living here for a couple of years now. I picked these flowers and now all my brothers are ravens and they flew away. And the witch is like, yeah, that's how this house works. That's the enchantment I put on my house. Why would you pick those? They were perfectly fine in the water. They don't need to be in a vase on a table. That's crazy. Well, now your brothers are ravens, and they're ravens forever. There's no way to break the curse. I'll see you later. Goodbye. And the princess is like, wait, hold on. There has to be a way to break the curse. Like, please tell me what the way is. And the witch is like, well, there's only one way to break a curse, and it's really hard, and I don't think he'd be up for it, and it's just like, it's icky. Just let them go. They're already in the sky. And the princess is like, no, I swear I'll do anything. I'll even die if I have to. And the witch is like, wow, dramatic. Not required to break this curse. I'll just tell you, okay, before you throw yourself off a cliff or something. So the witch tells her that in order to break the curse, she has to be silent for 7 years. And she cannot speak. And if she even so much as utters a single sound, even if it's only an hour left until the final, minute of the 7th year, the curse will be forevermore. Her brothers will die on the spot, and she'll have, ruined everyone's lives, or at least the lives of 12 other people, and the lives of those Elise that she needlessly picked. So the princess is dead silent. She just nods, says nothing else, and vows to herself inside, with her inside voice, that she will in fact remain silent for 7 years in order to return her brothers to their human form. So she decides to leave the enchanted cabin, because clearly that cabin came with a catch-22 she was not prepared for, and head off into the woods to find another place to stay while she waits out her 7 years of silence. And, she lives sort of like a wild person in the woods for a little bit, a couple of days, spends her days sleeping in trees and stuff like that, until one day a king from a neighboring kingdom passes through the forest with his hunting party, and the dogs surround the tree that she's currently staying in, and they're barking at her. And when the king looks up, he's like, oh, fair maiden, come on down. What are you doing up there? And she doesn't say anything. And he's like, oh, that's weird. But as he's looking at her, he can see that she's wearing the remnants, at this point, of really fine clothing. She has that beautiful star on her forehead, and she is, in fact, stunningly beautiful. So he's like, if you come down, I'll marry you. Would you like that? And she nods, and he climbs up the tree and brings her back down, and then takes her on horseback all the way back to his kingdom. And they are, in fact, married immediately. I would like to imagine that more time passed, because if we're doing the math here, she's very young, you guys. She's very young. But for the sake of my story, she's actually 18. Because the fuck. Grimm. Brothers. Fairy tales. So they live together for a few years in harmony, happiness. They're having a great time. They're thriving. The king doesn't mind that his wife doesn't speak, and it's not till his mother comes to visit him from her kingdom, her little castle. She comes to visit him, and she's like, "The fuck is this? You just found someone in the woods, and then you married them? She's not even royalty." And he's like, "No, I'm pretty sure she's royalty. She was wearing really nice clothes when I found her. I mean, sure, they were rattered and tattered and a couple sizes too small for her, but I'm pretty sure. Also, look at the star on her forehead. Only nobility can have cool magical stars like that. That's so cool. She's also stunningly beautiful in a way that only princesses can be. I'm pretty sure that she is in fact a princess." And the queen's like, no, she's not. In fact, she's probably just some dumb street urchin that you found out there who has never spoken a day in her life. And look, she doesn't even smile. She doesn't react. She doesn't laugh. She doesn't cry. She's crazy, and probably full of ill virtue, because only people who have no virtue wouldn't laugh when they see funny things happening in front of them. And so the king's like, well, that is kind of getting into my head now that you have mentioned it and brought it up. So then they try to make the new queen, our princess, laugh. They hire jugglers, jesters, stand-up comedians, everything they can, minstrels, theater troops, to make the princess laugh, and it does not work. She never smiles. She doesn't even crack a smile. She doesn't put her hand over her mouth or anything. She has no reaction to all this. And after seeing that his wife in fact does not react to anything hilarious, the king is now concerned. And he wasn't concerned the years that they were married, but now that his mother has mentioned it, he's like, that is kind of, maybe she doesn't have any virtue. Maybe she is an evil creature that I just allowed into my home because she doesn't fucking laugh. And I didn't notice the entire time we were married. So he feels like he has no choice. He decides to order her execution, because that's the most logical step in this progression. And so, therefore, ergo, it goes, they establish a whole bonfire. They strap our young queen to it, and he's like, hey, just say something. just smile or laugh or something. It would be so much nicer if you would just smile. At which point, she probably ground her teeth into fine powder, because I know I would have. And he's like, and then you'll be free from this. You won't have to die. And she doesn't react. She doesn't do anything at all whatsoever. And it just so happens, you guys, that as they're lighting the pyre and it's starting to go up in flames, the anniversary, the final minute of her 7 years of silence has ended, and 12 ravens fly down from the sky, and as they touch the ground, they become men again. It's her 12 brothers, who immediately take fucking action, tear apart the funeral pyre, wrestle their sister down from it, and, they hug her and announced to everyone that the reason she stayed silent was to reverse the curse on them. And she finally opens her mouth and speaks to her husband, and she doesn't start out with a stream of cuss words. I don't know what's wrong with her, but she does tell him and confirm that this is the reason why she had to stay silent, because her brothers would have died if she had spoken in 7 years. And the king's like, oh, what a relief. And then he looks over at his mom and he's like, look at what you almost made me do, oh my god. And because our king has been really rational and level-headed up to this point, he decides to make his mom go face a judge. And the judge is like, put that bitch in a barrel of boiling oil, fill it up with venomous snakes, and roll it down a hill. So she absolutely dies. The mother-in-law dies. A horrible death. The king is comfortable sentencing his mother, who was only looking out for him, to a horrible death. Not that I'm on Teen Mom. You guys, just the king is not making the most rational choices, and I don't like that. And then basically, what happens after that is that they all live happily ever after. In the New Kingdom, they never return home, so their mom never knows what the fuck happened to all 13 of her goddamn children. And that's it. That's the end. The king, in their original kingdom, doesn't get to pass down his line to anybody, because I'm guessing after the 13th child, mom was like, we're not having any more babies, because they just keep disappearing into the woods, because you say weird shit. And that's it. That kingdom crumbles to dust, and the other kingdom is full of, happiness and joy, and this girl is fiercely protected by her 12 other brothers, who probably are, looking at the king like, don't say the stupid shit you're about to say. And that's it, you guys. That's the end of the story. That's the end. And you might have noticed, if you have heard the previous story or are familiar with it, that it has a lot in common with the Hans Christian Andersen story of the Seven Swans, or whatever it's called. It has so many different names. But I did it. I did the story about the brothers who turn into swans. And like I said, I will link it down below, because it is one of my favorite fairy tales of all time. And so when I read this story, I was like, wait a minute. This has so much in common with that, because there's that vow of silence and, having to wait until the last moment when you're nearly executed before you can save your brothers, and those sort of things. And the shirts never play a part in this version of the story, but they played a huge part in the other version, because she had to not only stay silent, but also weave them shirts out of stinging nettle so that they could return to their original forms. And it's just a very interesting story. So I don't know if the Grimm's Brother version came out first. I didn't really look that far into it. Or the Hans Christian Andersen one did. Either way, one of them is ripping off the other. And I feel like Andersen maybe did it just a little bit better. But it's also, there's other stories that are like this, where brothers turn into birds. It's a very common trope in fairy tale. And then the curse has to be reversed. So yeah, just an interesting story, a fun story that I wanted to share with you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. I appreciate your faces. Until next time, guys, happy crafting. Bye!